Welcome. We are so glad that you're here for another mental health and wellness chat. I'm Brittany, and I'm one of your VC Counseling Center counselors. And we're here today to have real discussions and conversations about the emotional challenges that students face and kind of discuss navigating some of those issues. So, today, as you can see, the topic is body talk, which is like a little mini series that we hope to do about different aspects of self esteem, self image, and weight and self love. So today we're tackling navigating weight loss and self-love. So I have a very special speaker today, and I will let her introduce herself and kind of talk about what brings her to the podcast today.
Hello, everybody. I am Christy Henry. I am the support services assistant. You've probably seen me in JP's Market or maybe spoken with me on the phone about, maybe some basic needs or something you need to get connected with. I'm really honored to be able to speak about this because I have lost quite a bit of weight. And so, navigating such huge changes, sometimes we need therapy to talk us through those things. So I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I was excited when we were talking about doing this because, I've seen so many students and just clients in my life and career that, losing weight for them is obviously a very important thing. And a lot of times people do it to be healthier and to, have access to do things and different stuff that they want to do. But ultimately, most of the time we end up in this place of self-doubt or feeling worse about ourselves than when we, maybe had more weight. And so it's something that so many people struggle with. And it's something that I don't feel like is talked about enough. Because I feel like a lot of times people are like, well, you've lost so much weight. You should feel better and you should be happy and you should love yourself and you should, all of these different shoulds, right? But a lot of times people just don't have that experience.
Absolutely.
So this is really important. I wanted to make sure that we covered topics related to this because, obviously, depending where you're at in your college journey, if we're talking about traditional college students, a lot of times we, especially at just the age and development that we're at, body image issues are so common. And I even think, I'm older, but I'm not that old. I'm going to go on record and say that, like 34, right? Even I still struggle with body image issues. And I feel like it's a lifespan issue, that it's not just tied to just a certain age, right? There's so many weight loss drugs, diet trends, so much pressure on our physical appearance, self-perception, the way we feel about ourselves, our self-esteem, like it's constantly changing and it's always a point of focus, I feel like, for most people. So I guess, Christy, I'll give you a minute to share kind of what triggered your weight loss journey. What are you comfortable sharing about your experiences?
Yeah. So, my weight loss journey began really because of my mother.
Mhm.
So she passed away, unfortunately, in 2019, and I was her caregiver for the last 5 or 6 years of her life. She did die of renal failure.
Mhm.
And so with that, she had diabetes and, she, like I said, she passed away in 2019 and then I got married. And a month after she passed away, I found out I was pregnant.
Oh, wow.
And so that was kind of like a lot to navigate. Then the pandemic happened.
All at one
But
time,
yeah, and so that was kind of crazy. But the doctor said, "Oh, you have gestational diabetes, but it'll go away." So it was always kind of in the back of my mind that I needed to do something about it. But once I kind of went through the postpartum and all of that, I last year in January 24, my blood sugar was high, and they said you are pre-diabetic. And for me, that was the change that I needed to really like, okay, we've got to do this because she
Yeah.
suffered a lot. And I feel like I honor her by being healthy myself. So I
Yeah.
can, have that example for my daughter and things like
Yeah.
that. So that's really what triggered everything. So
Okay. And really, that's amazing. I can only imagine, like you said, with all of these triggering events leading to it, there had to have been a lot of highs and lows in general, especially emotionally. What, so do you feel like your transformation, would you categorize it as, primarily physical, or were there other aspects to this whole process for you that were hard?
I think that, the first year was physical because, it's hard to move your body if you
Mhm.
don't move your body.
Yeah.
So you got to do that, but then it's also mental because you've got to like really engage and say, I'm going to show up for myself and I am going to do this. So I would say mostly physical, but now as I'm getting smaller, it just your perception of yourself, like you still see, I shouldn't speak for everybody,
Yeah.
but I still feel like I'm that heavy person.
Hmm.
And it's, of course, we're on a journey and we're working towards acceptance, but man, sometimes
Yeah.
it's hard. I think it's more mental now.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
hear that a lot from people is like, they start buying smaller clothes, they look in the mirror. There's like several parts, but big ones that I hear are like that fear of gaining weight back. So
Hmm.
then like a weird relationship with food because of that and
Hmm.
kind of back and forth, lots of anxiety. And then also the still feeling and seeing yourself at a heavier weight. So then when other people compliment or comment on it, for some people, it can be really stressful, really anxiety provoking, really overwhelming because it's like, how do I even respond to what you just said to me? Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to say about that. It's like, there's almost like a spotlight on your physical appearance for everyone else when like they may mean well, but ultimately like, I don't know. What are your thoughts on this? Have you experienced this?
Well, yes. And, I think the importance of clothes, you mentioned that, like for women, for whatever reason, like I'm a size 10, 12, and 14,
Yes.
sometimes a 16, just
uh,
depending on just how the clothes are made. And so that can be very
hmm.
frustrating for someone who's on that journey, just because it's like, oh my God, I'm getting fat. Like,
Yeah.
and then you have the anxiety. So, and everyone's different. Like for me, I like getting compliments, but people I feel are more sensitive. I don't know why I'm air quoting that, but I feel like they are more sensitive now. Like I know
Mhm.
just from when I've worked here, they're like, well, we really didn't want to tell you because we didn't want to make you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really beautiful because I'd never, believe it or not, this is not the first time I've lost this much weight, but I
Yeah.
had such disordered eating in the past,
Yeah.
and so I gained it back. It's really
Mhm.
true. That's why it's so important. Nutrition, mental wellness, and just it's the whole picture, not
Yeah.
just one thing. But anyway, yeah. So I totally get what you're saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's makes it hard when clothes are not what they're supposed to be.
Exactly. Yeah, no joke. And I even experienced similar things, right? Like every brand is completely different to the point of it's, 4 or 5, two
Hmm.
inches, whatever it might be in terms of waistline. It's so frustrating.
Hmm.
It's like you have to go try things on and then we get flack because it's like, you're always in the dressing room. It's like, no, I actually have to try every single
Exactly.
item on because I have no idea what this is going to fit like.
Exactly.
For sure. So, okay. Do you feel like, in terms of self acceptance, where do you feel like you're kind of at this point in your, like, oh, if you're comfortable sharing, are you still at a point that you're trying to lose weight or are you at your ideal weight now?
No, I wanted to lose about 25 more pounds.
Okay.
But like people don't believe how heavy I am. Like people don't ask, but I mean like in my
Mhm.
family, just because we all carry our weight differently.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like I said, it's still a process. You've got to just keep working towards that goal. To me, I almost wonder, what am I going to do when I get there? Because I'm so
Yeah.
determined.
Hmm.
But that's something, that determination, you've really got to work on it. It's not something that just pops up, but
Yeah.
I'm in a good place. When I have days that I'm like, oh, I feel just as I don't know if that's like a nice word. You know what
Hmm.
I'm saying? Like, because I feel we're going to get off on a tangent. I feel like heavier people that are body positive, and I
Yeah.
didn't have that growing up. So I'm 10 years older than, or 9 or 10 years older than you.
Yeah.
And we didn't have that. It was always, you're fat. Like if you
Hmm.
just look gross, you're already fat, but that's still a
Yeah.
thing. But, so, I've had friends tell me what you need to do is, because I do have clothes from when I was at my heaviest. They
Yeah.
said, just go ahead and try that on. So you can, because man, your thinking is not, when you see yourself heavy,
Yeah.
but then you actually put on that shirt when you were that heavy and it's like to your knee,
It puts it
it's
into
like,
perspective. Yeah.
whoa. So I've been very fortunate to have those supports along the way. I
Yeah.
guess that's what I'm saying.
Well, and I'm going to co-sign your tangent because I love tangents, but I was just talking to my daughter about this the other day because, she's 14. Yeah, 14 now. Aging myself here. I started young. Okay. But regardless, and we were having this conversation about body image standards and how they've changed over time, right? Because I
Mhm,
feel like even my brain is stuck in this body image standard of the late 1990s, going into early 2000s, where Britney Spears at maybe 120 pounds and Avril Lavigne,
mhm,
and, it's very straight hipped, it's very underweight, it's
mhm.
very not muscular, it's very stringy, like, and it's so ingrained in my subconscious that that is the beauty standard and ideal that I look around today, and that is absolutely not the standard and ideal
Right.
today. And I love that you bring that up because it's a sharp contrast, but it's also a much more accepting and embracing of
Healthy.
healthy and
Mhm,
reality at
mhm,
the end of the day. Because yes, some people look like that, but that's a very small percentage of people that are capable of looking that way versus most of us. We all have different shapes, sizes,
mhm,
levels of fat, places that we carry fat.
mhm.
And so it's much more embracing and accepting today than it's ever been historically, for sure.
And I like that. That's
Mhm.
good. We need to move more toward that.
So we know that, I mean, what are your thoughts, Christy? Do you feel like weight loss equals instant self-love or instant happiness?
It does not, because I struggle with this. Like I said earlier, it's a journey, and I'm working towards acceptance. Because,
Yeah.
and I don't know why that is, but yeah, I think I'm definitely a lot happier.
Mhm.
But that was not instant, just because I've put so much work in over this year and a half,
Yeah.
and it's so important to balance. I say it again, balance the nutrition with your mental health, because it's having good community around you,
Yeah.
having people that want to uplift you. So sometimes I have to be reminded, "You're doing a good job." Like,
Yeah.
and that's really and that's r I'm so thankful for that, because I think it helps me along a little faster than if I were just, like, isolated or on my own, so I'm
Well, yeah,
grateful.
and
Yeah.
we do that with so many things too, just as people, where we focus on the end goal, we focus on this ideal, this expectation in our head of what it's supposed to be, and rarely do we ever stop to acknowledge those small steps along the way. That's like, yeah, but you've made such huge strides since last year, and like comparing you to last year is totally different and like a massive improvement for you in so many ways. And I do want to brag on Chrissy for a second. I wanted to do this earlier, but then I got distracted with rambles. But she annihilated the step challenge
That was
here
so
for the
fun.
wellness program. Absolute annihilation. It was amazing. So yeah, so let's discuss a little bit some of the mental health implications of significant body changes. And you've kind of already touched on this already, but ultimately, body dysmorphia is something that can persist or even intensify whenever we experience like large amounts of weight gain or loss, either one. And body dysmorphia is just kind of this idea that what I see in the mirror is not in alignment with objective reality. Like, if we lined up 10 different people to give an evaluation of a certain part of our body, they would not agree with my evaluation. So this can look like anything from, feeling like your nose is absolutely massive to a disproportionate proportion of your face where most people would not even notice your nose, or it can even come down to just the look and shape and weight of our body. So this is kind of like the example you were giving, Christy, where it's like, I objectively know that I weigh 150 pounds, but I feel like and I see myself as 250
Mhm,
pounds. Big difference between those two things.
mhm.
So, and I think this is interesting to explore too, of like that difference between getting social validation, so getting validation from other people, and then getting my own validation of the way that I view myself, because those are two very different things. So what are your thoughts on that?
So I think the internal validation, I don't know, they're both pretty hard. I was going to say, I think it's harder for internal validation just because you live in your body.
Yeah.
You see it every day. You go through those struggles, those thoughts. For me,
Mhm.
and I'm still probably like this. I have and I've worked on it through therapy, black or white
Yeah.
thinking. And
Mhm.
so I've really had to work on, okay, it's not all this and it's not all that. You're human. You're doing your best. The social validation for me is kind of like icing on the cake. I know we're talking about food, but
Yeah.
but yeah, that internal validation is so important, because how you talk to yourself matters, because that's the attitude that you live with every day. So I think working on internal, that's really important. And you can do that in therapy. They'll
Yeah,
help you. Yeah.
absolutely. So I know that this maybe isn't your direct experience, but I do hear this a lot from people, and I'm, wondering how many people listening might have this experience of, other people's perception of my body and commenting on my body. Now, like you said, that does not bother you, and you're like, it makes you feel good to receive those compliments. And I guess I'm speaking to those individuals that maybe that is too much for them or overwhelming, and they're just not at a point where they're ready for others to comment on their bodies or their weight loss or whatever it might be. So, what do you feel like? How could internally, even in the moment, either one, how could someone navigate these situations when, let's say unsolicited, I come up to you and I say, like, hey, Christy, you've lost so much weight. Like, you look great. I love that for you. But assuming that that's overwhelming for you in that moment, how could someone handle that?
Well, what I would do is I'd be like, I really appreciate that you took the time to compliment me.
Mhm.
I'm really working. And see, again, this is you have to be really honest with yourself, and a lot of people aren't. And
Yeah.
she would say something like, but I'm just not really comfortable taking these compliments, just because it's kind of been a long journey.
Yeah.
But I've I don't know if this sounds bad, but you really don't owe that to anyone to
Yeah.
have to
Explain.
explain,
Yeah.
but you should always stand up for yourself
Yeah.
because 9 times out of 10 or maybe 10 times out of 10 people don't want to upset you.
Yeah.
And they're thinking it's out of the goodness of their heart, but it's always okay to say it's not okay. Like to say,
Yeah.
be gracious about it, or
However you want
temper.
to handle it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
however you want to
Hmm.
handle it, thank them, but to let them know because
Yeah.
they don't wanna hurt you, and it's important to say something.
Well, and because, like you said, I mean, you have to live in your body and your brain 24/7. Other people do not, and so it's about, at the end of the day, it sounds like it's more about your internal validation and you
Mhm,
working with yourself. And we do know, I mean, of course, I dropped my nerd statistics in here, but we do know that 80% of women and 34% of men in college report body dissatisfaction. And honestly, I thought that statistic would be higher,
mhm,
honestly, because I feel like, in my experience sitting in a counselor chair, I feel like more often than not, people have negative perceptions of either their personality, how others perceive them, or their body specifically.
mhm.
We are our own worst critic. Absolutely. And we know that only 15% of college students who struggle with eating and body image issues ever actually seek any type of professional help for those issues. So, Chrissy, it sounds like you did end up seeking help for,
Mhm.
what you're going through and, this entire journey and process for yourself. So, what do you feel like were either some motivating factors for you to get that help or even some barriers that you had to seeking that help and obtaining it?
Yeah, and I think because, the first time I lost a whole bunch of weight, it was hard for me because people treated me differently, but I was still the same person.
Yeah.
And I really could not make those two things meet. Like, how could you treat me differently? I always felt like because I've been heavy my whole life, I had to be funnier, I had to be smarter, I had to be
Mhm.
more interesting so that people would like me or accept me, which is really that is very sad. But, so, fortunately I had friends that encouraged me to not be so ugly to myself because I used to talk really bad
Yeah.
about myself, and I had a good friend say, "Would you talk to me like that?" And
Mhm.
absolutely, I
I
would
love
not.
that,
I would
yeah.
not. And so, it's really retraining the disordered thinking.
Yeah.
So that's why therapy was so helpful. I've been very fortunate, to always just have that attitude, like you need to talk to somebody. It's okay to talk to somebody. And I know like for some people that's
Mhm.
not the case, and it's really sad because they go through life struggling and they don't have to.
Yeah.
And so that's always whenever if I could always like recommend therapy, go talk to somebody.
Yeah.
It's really helpful because yeah, there's no need to suffer.
Well, and especially in, such a common barrier for so many people is the cost of therapy, the
Hmm.
cost and the time commitment, which I understand both of those things, right? Going and getting private therapy can cost upwards of $150 an hour per session, especially if you don't have health insurance. But I mean, here at the college, it's 100% free so long as you're enrolled in a class and you're a student here at VC. It's totally free therapy. But the time commitment is a valid concern that people have. It
Yeah.
does take time to not only go to therapy for an hour a week, but also set the time aside in your life to reflect on these things, to, watch yourself, notice your behaviors, notice what's going on. And I think this ties back into kind of what you were talking about too, of putting yourself first and putting in the work for yourself,
Mhm.
because ultimately that's what it comes down to is this time worth you and your health and your wellness?
Yes.
For sure. So we do know that there's a lot of external pressures, not only just as a college student, but just in general, right? So there's diet culture, media expectations, social media, comparison traps. So what do you feel like, what support or lack of support did you experience from family, health professionals, other people in your life?
Well, and I was thinking, like I've said, I mean, I was heavy my whole life, and my parents never. Some people have parents that have pointed that out,
Yeah.
like you need to do something. And my parents were never like that. I was fortunate, like I was always heavy, and that's what it was. Sometimes my dad would be ugly to me. We're not going to have therapy session here,
Right.
but it was like people don't know how to express how to be helpful.
Right.
So that maybe was his way of going, you need to do something, so that was kind of like the foundation. But I've been very fortunate, like in my former life, I was a professional musician and singer.
Oh, that is
And
cool. Yeah.
so, yeah, so like the community of a choir, it didn't matter what you looked like
Yeah.
because you were all creating something that wasn't based on your appearance. And I loved feeling that acceptance,
Yeah.
and so I think that's where I met the people that were like, you need to go to therapy, don't talk ugly to yourself. I really don't, because
Yeah.
we love you, things like that. So I've really kept those core people in my life. So it's been
Yeah.
very helpful.
And I feel like that could be beneficial for so many of us to have something that we do and something that we're a part of that has nothing to do with our physical appearance or our worth in that way.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
love that. So, what are your thoughts on how did you advocate for yourself, or how could you advocate for yourself when others treat you differently based on appearance?
That's always been kind of a struggle because my personality is very non-confrontational,
Hmm.
but I've noticed the older I've gotten, the more like, no, it's important to stand up for yourself. But in my 20s, I wouldn't have done
Yeah.
that. I would have been very like, okay, well, I guess that's just how it is. But no, it is not that way.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to deal with that. You understand that those people, that's their thoughts. That has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
That's everything to say about them and nothing about
Hmm.
you.
Yeah.
So
And
that.
I think it's an age thing too, because I feel like I'm at that point where my goal in my life at this point is to be the adult that I wish I had when I was younger. And that's my
Exactly.
only goal. So then that guides all
Exactly.
of my decisions of, is it worth saying something right now? And my brain is immediately like, Brittany, you would have wanted someone to say something for you in this moment. So then I'll
Yes.
say it. So yes, absolutely love that perspective. And, being able to say things when they matter, is obviously onto comfort level, but it sounds like through your journey, you've gotten to this point where that makes sense for you.
Mhm.
So, how I'm hearing a lot of self compassion already as a
Mhm.
common thread here, a task that you had to learn through this process. So, how obviously you said that you've gone through this, you have the support that helped you learn how to implement and practice the self compassion. What do you feel like are some of the biggest things that you do today in terms of self compassion that make a big difference for you and your relationship with self love and accepting yourself?
Yeah, I really think it's changing the loop that's in my head. So, like when I have gone to counseling, they said, "What is on your tape deck?" So we're
Hmm.
aging those people, but
Yeah.
what's in your tape
I know
deck?
so many people are like, "What's a tape deck?" Google it.
Yes, it was real. So, yeah, like what's on your tape deck? Oh, I feel worthless. And this was me saying like I feel worthless. I feel ugly. No one
Mhm.
likes me. Like, and so really was changing that loop in my head. Like,
Yeah.
no, you are worth something. You are beautiful. You do matter to people. But and so I still work on that because we're always on a journey, right?
Yeah.
So it's still something that I have to do 'cause I will fall into that trap. "Oh, I feel so fat. Oh, I'm ugly." And my husband will be like, "You're beautiful." I was like, "Oh,
Mhm.
thanks."
Aw,
But
yeah.
it's things like that just to, because like I said earlier, that black and white thinking, sometimes I get sucked into that when I'm, like, maybe feeling more down,
Right.
when I'm not having good days. So,
Exactly.
it's really about changing the loop in your head, and that's hard to do,
It
but you
is.
can do it.
It does. It takes conscious effort every day. And, I've never in my life experienced a significant weight loss beyond just pregnancy, which really I wouldn't call that significant, maybe 40 pounds of weight loss after having a baby. But, sometimes even like redefining our goals and our definition of what matters in our life can be a point here too of, for example, not viewing my body as something that I can pick at and something that needs to be perfect and something that I'll have worth if it is XYZ, maybe instead tying worth to something more workable. Like, for example, my body is a vessel that gets me through experiences in this life, and I am a collector of experiences in this world. So, in order to collect those experiences, my body needs to be mobile to a certain degree, and it also needs to be fueled and taken care of to be able to take me these places to do these things.
Mhm.
So, sometimes even just looking at that perspective of how I'm viewing my body can be helpful for some people too, and shifting
Absolutely.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, general tips, tricks, nuggets of wealth and knowledge, right? So, obviously everyone circles back to daily affirmations here. And personally, me as an individual, I'll let you speak for yourself,
Mhm.
but I hate affirmations personally because I will never believe them. My brain is very critical, it's very negative, it's very, I like to call it realist, but
Mhm.
if I tell myself, you're beautiful, you're amazing, I will hear it, but it rarely ever sticks for me personally. So one thing that I always talk about with people when we talk about affirmations is just make it realistic and fair at the end of the day. It doesn't have to be, you're a beautiful butterfly who like it doesn't, because I'll make fun of that because I have the worst sense of humor, but I will never take that seriously using it on myself. So even if it just looks something like, hey, Brittany, you did your best today, and that is the most that you could have done, and that's all that anyone's asking for. Or you are you have grown so much as a human being from 2 years ago, and that's amazing. Good job. So just, even if it's an affirmation, kind of just grounding it in what's realistic and rational for you can be helpful. Like I said, I don't know how you feel about affirmations, Christy. Do they help?
I don't care for them either, because
Mhm.
it doesn't feel genuine to
Yeah.
me. But like the ones that I do like, if all you had was 30% and you gave 30%, then you gave 100%. Like I love
Yeah.
things like that, because
Mhm.
that more, because I am kind of negative too.
Yes.
So I mean, so I can relate to more like, okay, well, I did do good. So
Mhm.
that's kind of a way to affirm that you were on the right path. Like you
Yeah.
did try. Because sometimes, man, trying to say you're at 100% when you don't feel it, but you were giving, that's frustrating,
Yeah.
so
Mhm.
yeah, I'm totally with that.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And if affirmations work for you, awesome. Keep doing
Yeah,
them.
right.
You, do what works best for you. But ultimately, like this can be adapted to a way that works, even when you're not an overtly positive person. And then, yeah, like we talked about earlier, even like setting those boundaries around harmful weight or appearances talk, like, and then Christy's here to illustrate the spectrum that exists here, right? There's some people who are, not ready and open to those conversations and those comments. And then there are people who are very accepting and are welcoming of those comments. So even if you have never experienced this and you're just listening to this, trying to get insight about this situation, it sounds like it would obviously almost depends on the person and their
Hmm.
situation. So navigating those conversations very carefully, yeah. And then another point that I really like is surrounding yourself. So taking a step back, looking at what I'm ingesting in a day, not food wise, sorry,
Hmm.
but in terms of like social media, news, all these different things, and how much that aligns with body positive influence, if
Hmm.
that makes sense.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts on that, Christy?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of, what I've been saying. It's just like, okay, so what if you eat well and you exercise if you don't have the support, or you're just getting all these negative images, these negative words about like you're never going to be good enough, like, oh, this person's
Mhm.
fat. I will say all of my reels on Facebook are like my 600-pound life and weight loss.
Mhm.
Like I'm really into that. I really enjoy it,
Dr. Nels Arden is amazing. I
yeah,
have his magnets on
yeah,
my
I know I need one. 30 pounds. 30 pounds is not, yeah, but I like it, even when I was real heavier, because I was like, and this is not nice, but I was like, at least I'm not that bad
Mhm.
or that heavy. Or it gave me some like, okay, well, you haven't gotten there yet. You still have time.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And since I've been kind of on the weight loss journey, which I have for the past year and a half, I guess that's why. But reality TV can be junky sometimes,
Yes.
especially for your um image of yourself. So it is important to just be careful,
Yeah.
with that.
Well, and like you said, Christy, I think it's important to kind of take an inventory of what it is we're ingesting, not food wise, but social media wise. Of, it's easy to get sucked into a comment section on a particular video or image and, kind of not necessarily comment, but just read and see these negative image or these negative opinions and things. So really taking an inventory and stepping back and asking like, okay, do I need to take space from this platform? Do I need to take space from XYZ? Because like you said, at the end of the day, it really just comes down to what works for you, where you're at in your journey, and what makes sense for you and what's healthiest for you. So no, absolutely. And I feel like we've gone a lot already over how counseling helped or could help in journeys like this, because it can. I mean, for some people, yes, they lose a lot of weight and they feel great and they just like never miss a step and move on with their life. But there's so many people who, there's still some things there that are kind of simmering, and there are some things there that are unresolved. And, worst case scenario for some people, that can end up obviously being a trigger to, maybe not be as successful in a weight loss journey. So it's just one of the tools in a toolbox to help you be successful. And it's one
Mhm,
of the options at the end of the day.
mhm,
So yeah, and the biggest thing here is, I mean, with counseling in general, I'm going to always repeat it to you guys. You don't have to hit rock bottom to seek help. You don't have to be in crisis. You don't have to have, a significant mental disorder to come to therapy. We see so many people who do not. They just come in because they're overwhelmed, or they come in for, issues like this. Like, I feel like I still weigh, 200 pounds heavier than I am, and I need to figure that out. So that's totally an acceptable reason to come to therapy. And yeah, always utilizing campus counseling services if you do need them. But, I guess in closing reflections, Christy, I would love to know, what would you tell your younger self before the weight loss if you could go back?
Yeah, I would really just remind myself that you were doing the best that you could do at that time with the resources that you had. I think people put way too much pressure on themselves and they, oh, well, I should have been here and I should have been doing that. Well, no, you could only do what you could do at that time. So
Yeah.
that would be the first thing, and if you are trying to lose weight, if it were easy to lose weight, everybody would be skinny. That's just the
Mhm.
way it is, in my opinion. So, there are no perfect conditions like, oh, I'm going to start on Monday or I'm going to start on Friday.
Yeah.
For me, I wish I would have told myself, all you need to do is start. Just start, show up for yourself and be consistent. I'm a perfectionist. That's just in my nature. And so when I feel something is quote unquote wrong, I will really kind of hyperfixate on that, which
Yeah.
is not healthy. So again, just putting all of that into perspective. It's like you're going to show up for yourself and you're going to do the best you can do, and that's all you can do.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
One step at a time.
Yeah.
And even if we slide off of that step, it's not all is lost, and it's not, well,
Mhm.
oh, well, I might as well give up now. Like, it's part of the process. It's
It
give and
is.
take. There are going to be side steps, and there are going to be forward steps, and there are going to be backward steps. And all of them are valid and part of learning and growing, right?
Exactly.
If we allow ourselves to learn and grow from them
Right.
versus, use them as fuel to beat ourselves up and keep ourselves down.
Which we don't need.
I love that though.
Yes.
That's so insightful. And I
Yeah.
love that. So, and really the core message here through all of this is your worth is not your weight. Your
Mhm.
worth does not equal your body, your image, your, traits, your physicality. Like, that does not define your worth as a human being, no matter how much social media, pop culture tries to make us believe that it does. It absolutely does not. So, some other helpful resources, if you want to continue diving into this topic, can be NEDA, which is the National Eating Disorders Association. And then obviously, like we've talked, campus counseling services. So thank you so much for joining today, Christy. This has been your go-to space for honest conversations about mental health and well-being. So I'm your host, Brittany, and I'm here with
Christy.
and we are so glad that you spent part of your day with us. So remember, taking care of your mind is just as important as taking care of your body. Be kind to yourself, reach out if you need support, and know that you are never alone. So until next time, take care and take a deep breath.